Years ago, when I was teaching public speaking in the seminary, I would annually give the students an assignment in which they each had to give a speech about how to get from point A to point B, because I believe that anyone who could give clear directions would be a good communicator. Later, I became vocation director, which required that I drive to many places. And I can remember early on, before the computer even came into existence and MapQuest and the GPS, how my secretary would painstakingly take down instructions dictated over the phone by parish secretaries, priests, principals, and nuns. And I quickly discovered that giving directions is an expression of one's perspective. It is truly an art and not a science. Now, you ask someone about distance, and sometimes they'll respond with time. For instance, how far is it from Washington, D.C. to New York City? And some respond 4 hours instead of 240 miles. Some people will say, turn left on Route 95, and others will say, take 95 north. Distance is entirely a matter of perception. The first time I visited a parish school, I was told that the left turn would be about 3 miles from the gate. It was 8 miles. Visiting another school, I was told the bend would appear several miles down the road. It was less than a mile. Now, one would think that left is left and right is right, right? But apparently that's not the case. Turn left at the mobile station can mean several things, I've learned, and often it does not mean what one would think. I mean, the person giving the directions, you see, is accustomed to approaching the station from one direction and forgets that I'm approaching that station from another direction. And this I love. People will say, oh, it's where the Kmart used to be. And I say to myself, if only I had lived in this town 10 years ago, like those who used to shop at Kmart, where it used to be, I wouldn't be lost now. Some sweet little nun from Vermont, whose name I can't remember, directions were not a matter of time or distance. They were a matter of prayer. She told me when I spoke to her on the phone, it's 3 rosaries from Brattleboro, Vermont to Windsor, and she meant it. Now, when you look at God and the way God gives directions, He has His way too. And hearing and following them, it requires a special point of view. Well, let's look at the book of Genesis, where this wonderful story of Abraham takes place, and to whom God gave direct but bewildering, hazy instructions. God said to Abraham, go forth from the land of your kinsfolk and from your father's house to a land I will show you. It's not the where that was important, but the going forth. It was a sign of trust that God would show the way, even if His directions would be given on a need-to-know basis. Hundreds of years later, the author to the book of Hebrews commented on this. He said, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place. He went out, not knowing where he was to go. Or take Jesus at the Last Supper, when He told His disciples that He was going to prepare a place for them, saying, where I am going, you know the way. And Thomas protested, Master, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And Jesus says to Thomas, Thomas, have I been with you so long and still you don't know me? I am the way and the truth and the life. God does deal with us on a need-to-know basis. In other words, when we need to know it, God reveals it. But the bottom line here is all we need to know is Jesus. We all need help. navigating our way through life. When we lose our bearing and worry about where to turn next, it's time for prayer. It's time for us to trust that God will show us the way. With God, it's not so much where I am to go, but toward whom. It's not so much how I get there, but with whom. And I have found from years and years of experience that Mary, our mother of perpetual help, is the best GPS when it comes to my personal and spiritual direction, particularly when it comes to showing me the way to Jesus. She is God's perpetual signpost, or God's perpetual star, whatever you like. As Saint Bernard of Clairvaux has written, following Mary, you cannot lose your way. If she favor the voyage, you will reach the harbor of safety. I know that Jesus' promise to be with us always, it's not an empty promise. He didn't sign this promise on the dotted line. He sealed it with his blood. But you know, there's so many times when I need Mary to lead me, to show me, to guide me into the presence of Jesus, who desires to be with me. And I experience such freedom when I trust that her sure-footed steps will lead me to the one whom I seek, to the one who seeks me. There's that beautiful song we sing here in the Basilica during our Marian devotion, entitled, "She Will Show Us the Promised One." When I was working in Washington, D.C., with Mother Teresa's sisters at their House of Peace, every morning when the sisters would get ready to go out into the world to the poor to find Jesus in the least of their brothers and sisters, they would gather around a statue of Our Lady that was in their chapel. These beautiful, simple women standing around Our Lady's statue, huddled like little girls, and they would sing this very simple but very beautiful song entitled Our Lady of the Way, and it goes like this. No man can live as an island, journeying through life alone, since we're most loved by our mother, Jesus gives us his own. Be with us, Mary, along the way, guide every step we take. Lead us to Jesus, your loving Son. Come with us, Mary, come. Come with us, Mary, come. You know, I think that sweet little nun from Windsor, Vermont was correct. The best distance between 2 points is prayer. And I promise you, praying to Mary, whether it be 3 rosaries or a simple Ave, will lead us to the one we seek, Jesus, the promised one.